Alcohol wears two faces. On one side, it is a routine part of human gatherings, poured at celebrations, nursed at quiet dinners, raised to mark victories and to blunt hard days. On the other side, it is a force that quietly claims more lives each year than many of the dangers we spend far more time fearing. If someone proposed inventing a brand new liquid today that would impair judgment, inflame organs, injure bystanders, and tempt dependence while being sold on every corner, the idea would be dismissed as reckless. And yet here we are, with billions of people who drink and entire cultures woven around the clink of glasses. The contradiction is hard to ignore. Why do we hold so tightly to something that can hurt us so profoundly? Part of the answer lies in what happens inside your body after that first swallow. Alcohol is not just a flavor riding along with fruit or grains. It is a small, highly mobile molecule created by yeast to poison competitors. The moment it reaches your stomach and small intestine, an astronomical swarm of molecules begins to move. Some are handled by the enzymes that line your gut and your liver, your primary detox center. But your liver has limits. It can only process alcohol at a slow, fixed pace. Think roughly a sip of beer over several minutes. Unless you drink at a snail's tempo, the intake outpaces the processing, and the overflow rides the bloodstream to the brain. This is where the evening tilts. Alcohol slips across the blood-brain barrier with ease and starts interfering with the intricate language your neurons use to communicate. The precise choreography is so complex that scientists are still mapping it in detail, but the broad strokes are clear. Signals that calm the nervous system get louder, signals that keep you vigilant and measured get quieter, and the networks that help you evaluate consequences flicker. The result is a softer mood, looser restraint, and a sense that edges are rounded off. The world seems kinder, not because it has changed, but because your brain is filtering it differently. At the same time, alcohol coaxes out endorphins, your body's own feel-good messengers tied to laughter, singing, dancing, and that warm glow when a joke lands or a story connects. After a drink or three, the burden of self-consciousness lifts. The protective walls that keep you guarded in daylight soften, and words come more easily. You look someone in the eye a bit longer. You share a song, a secret, a memory. For a stretch of time, it can feel like the weight of being human is shared between many shoulders rather than resting on yours alone. This is the sweet spot people mean when they call alcohol a social lubricant. Gentle relaxation, a touch of courage, and the feeling of joining the circle instead of orbiting around it. That felt benefit is real, which is exactly why so many of us return to it. A barbecue seems incomplete without beer. A wedding toast begs for wine. A fancy gathering seems to ask for something sparkling. The occasions multiply because it's the weekend, because work ended, because you are celebrating, because you are stressed, because you are sad, because you are fine. The habit grows easily precisely because it answers a real human need to belong and to ease tension. But woven into that ease are costs that begin almost immediately when drinking outpaces your body's slow clearing process. Neurons that are mildly numbed become sluggish messengers. The prefrontal cortex, the region that helps with restraint and long-view thinking, goes quiet sooner than you expect. That is why you may say or do what the daytime version of you would veto. Balance and coordination degrade, which is why a few drinks can turn a staircase, a balcony, a bicycle, or a busy street into a hazard course. Pacing matters, and so does what you have eaten. With no food in the stomach, the gate that empties into the small intestine stays open and alcohol speeds through to the place where it is absorbed most efficiently. With a real meal, especially one with protein, fat, and fiber, The stomach works longer, the gate narrows, and the flood becomes a trickle your liver can handle. The difference is not subtle. With food, the rise in blood alcohol is slower and flatter. Without food, it is faster and steeper. A steep rise is exactly the situation that produces blackouts. Not because you forgot, but because your brain never laid down the memory in the first place. People discover whole stretches of a night are missing, and the missing pieces often coincide with impulsive decisions or risky behavior. That is not a character flaw. It is chemistry. The chemistry keeps unfolding below the neck too. Alcohol dissolves in water and in fat, which means it can seep into almost every tissue. As your body breaks it down, it produces acetaldehyde, a reactive byproduct more toxic than the original molecule. Even small bouts of drinking ask your systems to work hard to neutralize and clear that compound. When drinking is occasional and modest, the body can manage the insult. When drinking becomes a weekly or near-daily ritual, the demand piles up. The insults stop being separate events and blur into a background condition. That escalation often hides in plain sight. Everyone knows someone who seems to drink consistently and still hold it together. A friend who orders rounds and never appears rattled. A colleague who keeps up with work and raises a glass most evenings. It is easy to tell yourself that if they can run on that schedule, you can too. But tolerance is a double-edged sword. Feeling steady does not mean your organs are unscathed or that your reaction time is normal. It often means your brain has adapted to expect alcohol, and your perception is no longer an honest mirror. The paradox deepens because the very features that make alcohol appealing in company, looser talk, brighter laughter, shared warmth, are strongest right where harm begins. That first phase of easier connection is also the phase where guardrails start to lower. The more often you visit that terrain, the more often you practice reaching it by the same path. Before long, the occasions to drink expand to fill every gap. Weekend nights, then weeknights, then casual afternoons, then celebrations and commiserations alike. You pour a drink because friends are over, and you pour a drink because you are alone. The line between a chosen treat and a default reflex gets thin. None of this makes alcohol uniquely evil or uniquely irresistible. It simply means it is powerful, and power cuts both ways. The molecule does exactly what it is built to do, and humans respond exactly as humans tend to respond. We return to what makes us feel connected, confident, and at ease. The choice is not between denying that benefit or pretending the cost is mythical. The wiser choice is to see both at once, to understand how the body handles alcohol and how the mind interprets it, and then to decide how to weave or unweave it from a life you actually want. If the goal is to keep your evenings enjoyable without letting them tilt into damage, preparation is not a buzzkill. It is a shield. Eat real food before you start. Pace with intention instead of chasing a feeling. Choose quality over quantity, so you have a reason to sip rather than toss back. Keep water in the mix. These simple moves are not stern rules. They are the easiest way to preserve the parts of drinking people actually value while sidestepping the consequences that pile up silently. And if the goal is to step away entirely, the same understanding helps. Once you see clearly how alcohol slides into your brain's reward systems and your body's delicate chemistry, the magic trick looks less like magic and more like mechanics, and mechanics can be re-engineered. As the rounds pile up over months and years, the easy glow begins to exact a price. Alcohol is tiny and slippery, dissolving in water and in fat, which means it can seep into almost every tissue you have. Your body tries to render it harmless, but the first major step in that process turns it into acetaldehyde, a reactive troublemaker that is harsher on cells than the original liquid ever was. Layer that insult on repeat, and the damage stops being an episode. It becomes a background condition your tissues learn to endure until they can't. In the brain, the strain shows up where it matters most. Neurons shrink and their branches thin, like a forest stressed by drought. Connections that let different regions coordinate with speed and nuance are pruned back, which is why thinking can feel slower, focus more fragile, and recall less dependable. When this pattern goes on long enough, risk for cognitive decline rises, and the ability to bounce back after a night out is not as elastic as it once was. Age and pattern shape the stakes. The human brain does not finish wiring itself until the mid-20s, so heavy use before that time is like stamping footprints into wet cement and then expecting a smooth surface. Binge episodes in young adults can leave a hangover on memory that lingers well beyond the weekend, with little lapses like walking into a room and blanking on the why or struggling to learn new material as quickly as before. Stack enough episodes in late adolescence and the risk for early cognitive trouble climbs. The risks are not confined to the head. Alcohol is classified as a carcinogen, and its reach is broad. It increases the likelihood of cancers from mouth and throat down the digestive tract, and it raises risk for breast cancer in women. The unsettling part is that the line where risk begins is low. For many people, average intake of less than 1 glass of wine a day still nudges risk upward, and every step above that adds a little more. Globally, alcohol is linked to hundreds of thousands of new cancer cases each year, and hundreds of thousands of deaths that follow. Those numbers do not land on a spreadsheet. They land in families. The liver, your tireless chemistry lab, takes the brunt of the daily grind. Alcohol interferes with how fat is handled, so droplets begin to accumulate inside liver cells like clutter piling up in a workspace. At first, there may be no symptoms at all, which makes the early stage easy to ignore. But as fat builds, inflammation follows. Over time, the tissue swells, hurts, and begins to scar. Advanced scarring, cirrhosis, means the lab is mostly broken, with stiff, fibrous bands where flexible working tissue used to be. That progression can take more than a decade, which makes it feel distant until it is not, and once cirrhosis arrives, much of the change cannot be reversed. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people die because alcohol has undone the very organ trying to protect them. The heart and vessels are not spared. Regular drinking can raise blood pressure, weaken heart muscle, and tilt the blood toward clotting, which together push up the risk of stroke and dangerous cardiac events. On a population scale, that translates into another staggering toll measured in hundreds of thousands of deaths each year. Even for those who never see a hospital bed, the day-to-day effects add friction, fatigue that lingers, exercise that feels harder than it should, and a background thrum of stress hormones that never quite settle. Then there is the quiet erosion of how you look and feel in your own skin. Alcohol is calorie-dense, and it softens restraint around food, so late-night eating ramps up while judgment powers down. Weight creeps, inflammation flares, and skin shows the strain sooner than you expect, with dullness, puffiness, and lines that etch deeper under the push and pull of dehydration and poor sleep. It is not vanity to notice this. It is a sign your largest organ is reading out the state of the system underneath. When researchers sift through the data, a pattern emerges that should give anyone pause. Health risks begin to appear around the level of roughly a beer a day, and the chance of dying earlier than you should rises notably once intake reaches around 3 beers a day for men and fewer than 2 for women. If that sounds high, look around. In many parts of the world, especially across the West, the average man drinks close to that mark, and the average woman is not far behind. Few other substances we consume with such routine regularity sit so near the edge where harm begins. It is tempting to dismiss these warnings, by pointing to people who seem to thrive in spite of steady drinking. There is always a friend who downs more than most and handles a full life without obvious chaos. But the absence of immediate crisis is not the same as the absence of harm. Tolerance can hide the subjective signs even as the objective damage accumulates. A person can feel normal while their blood pressure creeps, while their liver quietly fattens, while subtle changes on brain scans take root. What looks like resilience is often just delayed feedback. All of this speaks to the core paradox that keeps alcohol anchored in our routines. It can soften edges, ease conversation, and make belonging feel easier. It can also lay groundwork for problems that show up first as whispers and only later as a roar. The transition from occasional treat to frequent fixture happens quietly. A weekly ritual becomes an every other day habit, which becomes most days, because there is always a reason. There is the colleague who says, "Come on, just one." There is the tough week. There is the good news. There is the empty evening. There is the subtle belief that because nothing tragic has happened yet, nothing will. The honest way through this is not to deny the part alcohol plays in social life, but to see the full picture and act before the slope gets slick. If you choose to drink at all, eat real food first, pace deliberately, and decide in advance where the night ends. If you decide you would rather not drink, it helps to name what alcohol gave you: ease, connection, celebration, so you can find those same experiences by other means. Hobbies that pull you into flow, exercise that leaves you buoyant, creative projects that get you out of your own way, communities that meet regularly for something you enjoy. All of these scratch the same human itch for belonging and relief without asking your organs to carry the debt. And if you are reading this with a flicker of worry about your own pattern, consider what the numbers really represent. They are not abstract warnings, they are mile markers. You do not need to wait for a rock-bottom story to make a change. You can simply decide that your brain, your heart, your liver, your skin, and your tomorrow are worth protecting, and then put small guardrails in place that make the better path the easier one to take. In the next breath, the focus shifts beyond your own body to the ripple effects, accidents, violence, and the way alcohol can steal, not just from the person who drinks, but from everyone in their orbit.